You've scrolled past 1,000 rented Lamborghinis, 1,000 captions about grinding, 1,000 Audemars Piguet Royal Oaks flashed in bathroom mirrors. None of it moved you anymore. Then, you kept hearing the same phrase, stealth wealth, people with more money than you'll ever count, dressed like they have none, wrists wrapped in a $16 Casio instead. You didn't get it. Ordinary looked like a costume, not a flex. You didn't understand it? Not really, until the morning you were standing in someone else's barn at 6 a.m., holding a bucket, watching a girl in a $340 dress fake exactly what you'd started to live. The paradox of wealth. You're the one who opens the gate at 6 a.m. before anyone else is awake, before the influencer crew shows up with their ring lights and their oat milk. Your name is Dax Merrill, and you manage the farm for a family whose fortune came from 3 regional airports and a logistics company nobody outside finance has heard of. You feed the 2 goats. You wipe down the antique cream separator that's never actually separated cream, only posed for photos. By 9 a.m., Priya, the 26-year-old heiress who signs your checks, will be here in a $340 linen dress from a Parisian atelier. Kneading dough she'll abandon the second the camera stops rolling, captioning it slow living. Finally free, you'll clean the flour off the counter she never touches again. This is your job, watching people pay to look like you. You used to think that was the whole story. Rich people cosplaying as poor for likes. Then, you met Ellery. Ellery Voss manages money. Actual money, the kind with more zeros than you can say out loud without stumbling. You handle his lawn now too, a side gig Priya doesn't know about, and the first time you pull into his driveway, you almost turn around. Sure, you have the wrong address. No gate, no stone lions, just a low, plain brick ranch house that could belong to a retired schoolteacher, sitting on land worth more than your entire hometown. Ellery answers the door in a t-shirt with a hole at the collar and a Casio watch. The $16 kind, resin band, the one that's been in every drugstore since 1985. You'll learn later, from a broker who mentioned it like gossip, that Ellery could write a check today for a Gulfstream G65, and not touch his checking account balance. He drives a 12-year-old Camry with 190,000 miles on it. He has never once mentioned his net worth to you, and you've been cutting his grass for 8 months. That's the moment it stops making sense to you. As one thing, Priya's poverty is a performance staged for an audience. Hers is the kind of poor you can photograph, the kind that needs witnesses to mean anything. Take away the followers and the loaf of rustic bread is just bread nobody eats. But Ellery's plainness has no audience at all. It isn't for you or for anyone. If you hadn't started cutting his grass, you'd have never known there was anything to hide. His invisibility is the entire point of it. One version of looking poor is a costume put on to be seen. The other is camouflage, put on to disappear. You start noticing it everywhere once you know to look. The neighbor 2 properties down from Ellery, a hedge fund guy, traded his Bentley for a base Honda CR-V after a magazine ran his address next to a photo of his old car. Meanwhile, Priya just bought a $58,000 vintage-look tractor that doesn't run, purely for the Instagram grid, and had it delivered on a flatbed the same week she asked you to rough up the barn siding so it would read as more authentic online. Same behavior, opposite engine. One is broadcasting, one is hiding. And somewhere between Priya's staged flower dust and Ellery's dead Casio battery, you start to understand that the way money chooses to look has almost nothing to do with how much of it there is, and everything to do with what it's afraid of or what it's chasing. You still don't know, driving home past both driveways, which one of them is actually free. That question follows you all the way back to the farm gate, because the fantasy, the one everyone else is buying into, didn't start with Priya at all. Poverty as an aesthetic. You look it up that night, still smelling like goat feed, because you need to know if Priya invented any of this or just inherited it. She didn't invent it. 300 years before her, a queen got bored of Versailles and had an entire fake village built behind the palace. A hamlet with a working dairy, thatched roofs, sheep washed and perfumed before she came to pet them. Marie Antoinette would put on a plain muslin dress, pick up a wicker basket, and pretend to be a milkmaid for an afternoon. Then, go back inside to rooms with more gold leaf than most churches. You read that at 11 p.m. on your phone, in bed, and you almost laugh because you spent your actual afternoon washing a goat for a photo Priya never even used. The costumes just got more expensive. You find the receipt Priya left on the kitchen counter last week. You weren't supposed to see it, but you were the one who had to walk it out to the recycling. $2,140 for sneakers. Balenciagas, the ones scuffed and split at the seam on purpose before they ever leave the factory, sold under a name that translates, more or less, to worn out. You think about your own shoes, the ones with the actual hole in them that you keep meaning to replace, and something in your chest tightens that you don't have a word for yet. It isn't just Priya. You start seeing it everywhere once you're looking. A guy from her college friend group, you met him once, at a party at the farm, Weston something, dropped $118,000 outfitting a Mercedes Sprinter van with reclaimed barnwood cabinets and a copper-soaking tub. Then, parked it at a paid campsite 40 minutes from his actual condo in the city. He posts from it every Sunday. He sleeps in his own bed every night. You mentioned this to Priya once, carefully, and she just shrugged and said, "It's about the feeling, Dax." That's the part that finally clicks for you. Standing in the barn at dawn, restaging the same milking scene for the fourth morning this month. It was never about the bread, or the goat, or the van. It's about being able to walk away from the machine that everyone else is chained to. The emails at 6 a.m., the calendar with no white space, the years where you couldn't take a Tuesday off if your life depended on it. And prove, publicly, that you don't have to. Priya doesn't want to look poor. She wants an audience to watch her opt out of something you can't afford to opt out of. You're not in the photo. You're the reason the photo works. You think about your own bank account on the drive home, the one sitting at $340, most of it already spoken for by rent due in 9 days, and the arithmetic of it lands somewhere low in your stomach. Priya's $100 loaf of bread costs her nothing. It costs you a version of yourself you don't have room to become. Not this year. Maybe not for a few years. Standing here, holding a phone open to a screenshot of a $2,140 shoe built to look like it's already given up. But something about that stings less the next morning when you're dropping grass clippings at Ellery's place and he comes out barefoot in the same faded t-shirt holding 2 mugs of coffee he made from grounds he reuses twice. He hands you one without asking if you want it. No one is filming him doing that. No one ever will be. And you start to understand that the loudest kind of poor you've ever seen isn't hiding anything at all. It's the quiet kind, right next door, that's built to make sure nobody's watching. The stealth wealth strategy. You're back at Ellery's the following Thursday, coiling the hose by his garage, when his neighbor's daughter, Britt, pulls up in a leased BMW X 5M50i with a fresh Chanel Classic flat bag, the caviar leather one, $11,600 retail. Sitting in the passenger seat still wrapped in tissue. Britt works the front desk at a dental office. You know this because she told you, twice, unprompted, the same week she also mentioned the lease payment, $1,140 a month. She said the number like it was a badge. Ellery doesn't own a designer bag or a lease. He doesn't own anything with a logo on it that you've ever seen. When you ask him once, carefully, why a man who could buy the dealership doesn't buy the car, he says something that stays with you for days. The people who need you to know what they have are usually the ones still building it. I already have mine. I don't need a receipt. That's the difference you start to feel in your hands before you can say it in words. Britt's money is loud because it's still auditioning for something. Respect, envy, proof. Ellery's money went quiet the day it stopped needing an audience. He wears a plain crewneck sweater that, you later learn from the same broker who told you about his net worth, actually costs close to $1,900. Loro Piana, no branding, nothing your eye would ever price correctly at first sight. He is not hiding that he has money. He's hiding how much, and the difference matters more than you realized. You start to see why, once you actually think it through. You mow a lawn 2 streets over for a man who bought a Rolex Daytona Ref, 11650OOLN, and wore it to a permit meeting for a home edition. The estimate came back 40% higher than his neighbor's near-identical job. You hear about a contractor who read the room and adjusted his number the second he saw the watch. Wealth you can see becomes a number someone else gets to negotiate against. It gets darker than pricing, though. You remember the story everyone was talking about last spring? A pop singer named Ray Solano posted a video of herself trying on a diamond tennis necklace in her hotel room, geotagged, 3 hours before a show. She was robbed at the hotel that same night at gunpoint in the stairwell. And you think about a rapper out of Atlanta, Deshaun Priest, who put his new house on his page, background visible, address legible on a delivery box near the door, dead within the month. You don't say any of this to Priya. You don't think she'd hear it the way you do. It's the reason you finally understand that famous people will pay absurd amounts just to feel ordinary for an hour. You read once about an aging pop star who rented out an entire grocery store in Boca Raton for a Sunday morning, paid the staff, paid strangers to walk the aisles pushing carts near him, just so he could pick out cereal without 300 phones aimed at his face. He wasn't buying groceries. He was buying the thing you get for free every single week without noticing. A body moving through a store, unwatched. You think about that walking out to your own car, an '09 Corolla with a check engine light you've been ignoring since March, keys jingling in a pocket with no room for anything else. Nobody has ever robbed you for what you're wearing. Nobody ever will. For the first time, that feels less like something missing and more like something you didn't know you already had. And once you start noticing what invisibility protects you from, it's hard not to notice what visibility costs, even when nobody's pointing a gun at all. The Diderot Effect trap. Priya gives you the coat on a Tuesday, the same offhand way she hands you a dead phone charger, like it costs her nothing to let go of. It's a birthday gift she never wore, still tagged, a caramel-colored shearling from a Milan atelier that retails for $3,400. It'll look better on you than in my closet, she says, already walking away, already forgetting she said it. You hang it in your front hall that night, and it takes exactly 4 days for it to start rearranging your life. Your coat rack, the wire one from Target you bought 2 apartments ago, looks wrong under it now. Cheap in a way you never noticed until this exact coat was hanging on it. So you buy a real one, walnut, $89, and once it's up, you notice your entryway rug is stained at the corner in a way that used to be invisible and now feels like the first thing anyone would see. You replace the rug. Then, the porch light fixture looks dated next to the rug. Then, you're standing in a lighting aisle at 8 p.m. on a Thursday, and you catch yourself and stop. Right there, credit card still in your hand, and you think, none of this existed 3 weeks ago. Not the wanting, not the noticing. It came in with the coat. You tell Ellery about it the following week, half joking while you're edging his driveway, and he doesn't laugh at all. He tells you a story about a philosopher named Denis Diderot, a Frenchman who got a beautiful red robe as a gift back in the 1700s, wore it around his study, felt like a different man in it, and then started noticing that everything else in the room, the chair, the desk, the tapestries, looked shabby standing next to it. So he replaced the chair, then the desk, then, piece by piece, his entire house, chasing the standard the robe had set until he'd spent himself into debt over a gift he never asked for. He wrote an essay about it afterward, Ellery says, called it The Poverty of the Man Who Owns Everything He Needs and Wants Everything He Sees. You go home and actually look at the coat differently after that. Not at the coat, at the 4 days that followed it, the rack, the rug, the almost lighting fixture. You do the math on a napkin, the way you do now since you started actually looking at numbers. $89 plus the rug, plus what the lighting would have been, against the $340 sitting in, checking that has to last you 9 more days. The coat cost you nothing. The 4 days after, it nearly cost you $600 you don't have. You think about Priya's closet, the one you've organized twice, racks of things worn once for a shoot and never again, each item having done exactly this to something before it. Some earlier bag making an earlier bag look wrong, some earlier boot making a whole earlier wardrobe obsolete. She's not wealthy despite this treadmill. She can afford to be on it forever and never notice it's a treadmill at all because the checking account behind it never runs out the way yours does on day 26 of the month. Ellery, you realize, has been getting off that treadmill on purpose for decades. Same Camry, same Casio, same faded shirt, different day. Not because he can't feel the pull of a nicer thing sitting next to an older one. He told you once he still feels it, every time. But because he decided a long time ago which baseline he was willing to defend. You hang the shearling coat back in the closet that night, not to punish yourself, just to stop the noticing. You keep the walnut rack, though, some upgrades you get to choose to keep. What you can't undo so easily is the shape all of this leaves behind once the coat's excuse is gone. The story underneath the story, the one about who actually gets to call any of this a choice. The reality behind the act. Priya posts the milking video on a Sunday morning, the one from 3 weeks ago, the one you staged twice because the light wasn't soft enough the first time. The caption says, "Nobody handed me this life. I built it hoofprint by hoofprint. Get your hands dirty and the universe rewards you." By Monday, it has 2.3 million views. By Tuesday, a podcast has clipped it under the title, "Heiress reminds us hard work pays off." You read the comments while you're waiting for her to come down and film the next thing. Hundreds of them. A single mom in Tulsa saying she's going to start waking up earlier. A 22-year-old saying he's canceling his streaming subscriptions to get serious. You know, standing in that barn holding a bucket for a goat that's never once produced anything anyone actually drank. That none of them know about the 3 regional airports. None of them know you're the one who wakes at 5:30 so the light looks right by the time she gets here at 9. That's the part that sits wrong in you longer than anything else this month. Not the coat, not the sneakers, not even Brit's leased BMW. It's the caption. Because what Priya is selling to those 2 million people isn't a lifestyle. It's an explanation. If she got here through hoofprints and hard work, then anyone can. And if anyone can, then the people who haven't gotten there yet, the single dad in Tulsa, you, everyone who's ever done the math on a napkin against $340 in checking, must just not have knelt in enough dirt yet. You think about your own morning. The alarm at 5:30, the bus that doesn't run before 6, the 2 jobs, hers and Ellery's, stitched together because neither one alone covers rent and the car payment and whatever's left of the shearling coat lesson. None of that is a performance. There's no caption for it. Nobody's filming you scraping ice off a windshield in February because the parking spot you can afford is the one without a garage. You can't opt out of any of it for a weekend and call it content. You live inside it every day, whether or not it photographs well. That's the whole difference you finally understand. Standing there with flour dust settling on a floor Priya will never sweep. Her poverty is a costume with an exit. Yours, until very recently, was just Tuesday. She gets to choose the discomfort and choose when it ends. You didn't get to choose when your bank balance hit $340, and you don't get to choose when it doesn't anymore either. Not without doing something about it, one direct deposit and one decision at a time. You think about telling her this. You picture the sentence forming, standing right there in the barn with the bucket still in your hand. Then, you picture her face doing the thing it does, polite, a little wounded, already reaching for her phone to caption the moment as an example of staying humble despite the haters, and you put the bucket down instead and say nothing. But something shifts in you anyway. Quiet. The kind of shift nobody would ever put in a caption. You stop watching Priya's page as inspiration and start watching your own numbers as the only story that was ever actually yours. You open the banking app that night, not out of dread this time, just to look. $340 becomes the number you're determined to watch move, even if it only moves by $40 this week. And somewhere between her hoofprints and your alarm clock, you understand the question this whole month has actually been asking you. Not whether the rich are faking poverty, but why you ever needed their fake version to notice the real one sitting in your own account. The $340 that finally belongs to you. You close the banking app and just sit with it for a second. $340. Same number as last week. Different feeling entirely. You're not the guy in the caption anymore, waiting for hoofprints to explain his life. You're the one who does the math on a napkin and means it. Ellery's Casio, Priya's $2,140 sneakers. None of that was ever really about them. It was about what you decided to notice once you stopped watching their story and started watching your own. Tomorrow, you'll still take the bus at 6. You'll still coil Ellery's hose, still sweep flour off a floor that isn't yours. That part doesn't change on command. But the number in your account is the one thing in this whole month nobody's staged for you, and nobody can take the credit for moving it but you. $40 is still $40.